quick insert before the video starts. Apologies for the sort of lackluster uploads recently. I don't exactly know when this video is going to go up, but the internet where I live has completely gone. I'm waiting for an engineer to come and fix it, so I can't actually upload any videos. So when I'm recording this, I can't upload it the same day that I'm making it like I normally would do. So it's probably going to be the better part of a week from what I understand from when I'm recording this to when it's actually going to be fixed. So if you've noticed there's a bit of a gap on this channel and my others, that's the reason why. So I'm doing the videos as normal, just I can't get them online just yet. Now to the intro. Hello there and welcome back to the channel. This is Nerd.World History. If you're new here, this channel is dedicated to all things history. If you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. In this episode we are going to be looking at currency in pre-Roman Britannia, most notably the kinds of coinage that were used from about 50 to 60 BC onwards, as well as an earlier form that has been identified, as well as obviously the other forms of exchange that would have used, which would be basically an agricultural economy of the barter system. So not really going to be a big area on that. Before we get started, I'd just like to mention that down below I have linked all of my other channels. There are another 3. I recently started another one called Nerd.World Order, as well as obviously my original Nerd.World films and Nerd.World. Please check them out. Like, share, subscribe to here and there if you like it, and if any of them are your kind of thing and you think they're good enough, hit the bell notification icon to stay up to date with any new videos that come out on my channels. In addition to that, please like, share, subscribe here as I said, and also remember this video once again is brought to you by my sponsor Relentless Rebels, who do a series of Viking style jewelry which we will get to later in the video. And as I said in my last video, again thank you to those who have felt the generosity to donate to me and my channel. I am a very small YouTuber and I am still trying to grow, and I don't ask for donations, but I want to say thank you to those that have donated. It gets used to buy myself new equipment as I have a full-time job, but obviously I'm not rich, so every little bit helps. And I just want to say thank you again to all those people that have donated. And again, it's not a requirement, I do this for fun, but it is nice because it has allowed me to upgrade some of my equipment and get better cameras and other such things. And with all of that said, let's get started on this video. So let's start with what's known as the earliest form of currency. Now let's begin with, we have no idea what the value of these things is in regards to modern money or even to contemporary money at the same time. Referred to by Julius Caesar as one of the earlier writers who actually mentions it, they use an iron bar type currency or iron rings. These, probably depending on shape and weight, denote value. They may have been representative of an amount owed, or may have been directly used as a form of direct currency, as in you take this bar and you use it the same way you would a coin. It's not exactly clear. Later though, you do get actual coinage turning up, but the earliest actual coins to appear in Britain were not British at all. They were Carthaginian from about 400 BC. They were possibly used as payment for British mercenaries hired by Carthage. It's also possible that they got here in other ways through general trade and was simply here because they were made of bronze, and the bronze itself may have been valuable to smelt down. It probably was a combination of both, as well as possibly other means such as stolen booty or whatever. Other coins come of Greek origin, and they start turning up a little bit later. You also have forms of Venetian currency turning up in Britain. Later, of course, you start to get Roman. Now, around 100, so disputed, but let's say 100 BC, we start to get actually minted British coinage starting to turn up. Now, you only get actual coins in Britain from the southern tribes. The Catovaloni, the Iceni, the Trinavante, the Coriol Tauvi, the Canti, the Duratriges, the Atrebates. These are tribes that are known to produce currency, as in actual coins, gold and silver. They didn't all have lettering on them, but many did, and it usually was derived from Greek, although it does look like it's probably derived from Roman. It's actually the alphabet being employed is probably Greek. Later coinage from the 1st century AD was more likely taking lettering inspiration from the Romans, simply because there was a lot more contact with them. Now this is to say that some people, at least in Britain, had some working knowledge of a written language. Again, this is dispelling this myth that the Romans introduced this. Certainly the Greek alphabet was introduced into Britain. We know the Greeks came here at about 300 BC. And obviously we'd had contact with other powers for many years, as well as there were people moving to and from Britain, spreading out. It would transfer of information. There was also a domestically produced written language, but this one never actually appeared in any coinage, to my knowledge. The coins, again, were produced in 2 different methods. The most common was by sort of hammering it. The other methods, some of them were smelted, but that was less common. They were more likely sort of hammered, which basically means, although we're not exactly, to be honest, actually, no one's exactly sure how they were made, but they were made by basically taking a blank coin and stamping into it what you wanted. So you'd have had like a print that would stamp into the soft gold or silver. Very, very common method of coinage making. Others, as I said, were smelted, so they were poured into a mold. But that was less common, probably because it was more time consuming and not overly as tidy. Now, as I said, there were different types of coinage used. Now, what exactly the coins were used for, how widespread they were, but is not known, but there were certainly a lot of them. Certainly in the lower tribes. It may have come about because of increased international trade with states like the Greeks, like Carthage, like Rome, that relied on not on a barter economy, but on a physical, like currency-based, capitalist-style economy. And it would have required them to have their own coinage. Now, as I said, at first they simply carried on with their own grubby British style until later they started getting coins, but the early coins were not ours, they were from others. Now, before we go any further, let's talk about something that modern currency can be spent on, where current coinage can be dumped. And that is on my sponsor, Relentless Rebels. They are linked in the description below, and they specialise in Viking-style jewellery. They've also recently begun branching out into a variety of others. Now, they're a relatively new company. They're not very old. I think they started in 2018, but they have got some quality goods, including several things that I've purchased from them, which I'm hopefully showing a picture of on the screen right now. And if you go to their website and find anything that you do like, particularly these things, so I believe there is a link for the Wolf Class bracelet down below as well. And if you use the code NERD20, you will get a 20% discount on all your purchases. And to be clear, this code can be used more than once. It doesn't have to be used just on your first initial purchase. It can be used repeatedly, and it continually gets you 20% off anything that you buy from them. So you get one thing and you like it, you can get some more later. So check them out. Use my promo code, get yourself a discount. Hopefully you like what you see. Now let's carry on with the video. Now, the kind of things they placed on the coins is quite interesting. It's quite telling. Romans typically are like we do today. You'd have a coin with someone's head on it, usually the face of the emperor. This is a tradition that has carried on since the days of the Roman Empire in this country and generally across Europe. But the Celts didn't really do that. When there was a head on a coin, it was usually a mythical beast, such as a gorgon or something else. One of the other more common things is you would see the first real representations of possibly Celts riding a horse, or simply an image of a horse. Now, the Celts seem to have a reverence of horses in certain areas, and that could have something to do with it, so I hate to use this word, but there could have been a ritual purpose to putting horses on coins. And I really hate using that word. I really hate it when I hear historians. It seems like a excuse word, because we don't really know. It's ritual. It's not always ritual. Ritual isn't always the reason. People have always been people, and sometimes it's just a pragmatic reason of they weren't near the water so they could deposit ritual offerings in it. They were living near the water because living near water is a good idea. Anyway, one of the things I do actually find interesting about the images on the horses is ones like this, where you see an image of a person riding a horse. And I remember many years ago being taught, one of the few things I was taught anything about the Celts in ancient Britannia was that they didn't ride horses. They might pull wagons, but they never actually rode a horse. The horses that we had in Britain were more like Shire ponies and like Shetland ponies, and that, but a bit bigger. They were good for pulling, but they weren't good for riding, so people didn't ride them. But yet, right back from the Bronze Age, the Beaker people and stuff, there's evidence of a sort of mounted warrior class, so it never sat with me. And then I look at these coins and go, but they're depicting an image of someone riding a horse. But then people do base this on skeletal remains of horses, but my opinion is they did ride horses. Whether or not they rode them into battle is maybe up for debate, but they certainly rode them. So anyway, moving along from that. The coins would often, as I said, be stamped with names. This is not uncommon before the Romans turn up either, and they started, as I said, you get people like Epilus putting their name on a coin. Now sometimes it was almost always the name of the person who was the chieftain of the tribe at the time in the local area where the coin was being struck. That would be the name on it. But in other coins, such as those of the Iceni, sometimes actually had Iceni wrote on them, not the name of the chieftain. So you didn't see Boudicca's name or anyone like that, or Venetus on a coin. You tended to just see Iceni or whatever. But some coins had no writing on them whatsoever, particularly the earlier ones. Now the influences on British coin design are clearly in the early days, of sort of a stylized Celtic theme, but the way they do it is clearly Greek. You see images of Apollo and people on early coins, which, whether or not these coins actually originated in Britain or actually came directly from Greece or were made by someone else or were just copies, again, a little unclear. But generally the early coins were definitely imitations or inspired by Mediterranean style coins, whereas the coins used in Britannia and Gaul, which were of their own domestic production, were quite distinct and quite different, as were many things in Western Europe before the Romans turned up. Very, very unique culture that's been wiped out and forgotten about. Now, of course, there was, as I said, there was a currency in place before coinage came into widespread use, but exactly how that type of currency was used, it could have been the same sort of way, but I think it would have been more likely a sort of more of a representation of amount owed, in my opinion, rather than the value. I mean, the value of iron is clearly an expensive raw material. For example, when the Romans took over Britain, they restricted the sale of iron so that they had control. So the military always had priority control, and iron produced in Britain was exported. Very little iron produced in Britain was used domestically after the Romans turned up. It was expensive, and the Romans put a monetary value on it, which the Celts clearly also held a monetary value to iron. But to the Celts, it was a practical thing to use, just like it was with the Romans, so it may have doubled as currency just because it was so useful. That's speculation, again. Could also have been ritual, who knows? Maybe it was. Now, there we have the brief history of basically pre-Roman. The later coins, which you start seeing in the mid-1st century AD, start to have heads on them and a very, very Roman influence. And after the Romans take over, the actual local production of coins practically ceases. In fact, I don't think there's any local production of coinage after the Roman conquest. I think all coinage used in Britain comes from Europe afterwards. It's actually stamped in Europe, not in Britain. So it has to kind of come back after the Romans. And even then it took a while because the Vikings and the Anglo-Saxon period, the Dark Ages basically, they used to use ingots and stuff like that. Coinage was less common. But anyway, that is a completely different era in history, and it's all definitely post-conquest, so it's not relevant to the scope of this. But it is, again, good to note, as I am not a Roman historian. Mostly, I mean that in the way that I'm not actually a historian, I just really like history, but I'm not pro-Roman in my everything, and I look back on history and I see the Romans are given credit for a lot of things that I don't think they're deserving of. And this is another example of it. They hadn't even been to Britain. They'd probably barely even heard of it when these coins were being made. Our culture here was far more ancient than that of Rome. Cities like Paris are hundreds of years older than Rome. There are settlements in Britain which are far more ancient and have been inhabited for far longer. There was a much older and more established culture already living here before they turned up, and to think that they weren't capable of ruling themselves, building a functional, harmonious society, is anyone that actually thinks that needs to reevaluate how they look at history. It's never that simple. That is not to say that the Romans did not achieve great things and did not introduce a lot of impressive technology and abilities and everything else into Britannia, but they didn't invent the wheel. And we already had the wheel. In fact, Britons had a lot of technology the Romans took away with them, which they found quite useful. I mean, one of the more gross examples would be waterproof clothing, which was done using urea. So, gross. The smell apparently was quite bad, but it worked. So, you know, swings and roundabouts, I suppose. Don't think we invented those. I don't think they did either. Anyway, there we have the brief history of coinage. Now, I go into the coins used in all of my individual videos about tribes, so I'm not going to go into it. It's just a broad video of what kind of currency was used, when and where. But by all means, tell me in the comments below any particular piece of information that I have missed, because this is a fairly broad one and I am aware of more detailed usage of coinage and exchanges between certain ancient powers in Britain, but I'm really looking at how coins were used, because as I said, those earlier coins were very unlikely to have been used directly as currency. It is extremely unlikely that the ancient Britons in 400 BC attributed monetary value directly to a coin in the way it was intended. They may have attributed value to the raw material in which the coin was made, but the coin itself as a use to exchange for goods would not have been something they would have been particularly familiar with or interested in adopting at that time. So those coins, which they weren't making but were being given through trade or as payment for something, in and of themselves were not of value to them, so weren't used as coins. That came much later, and that's when we see these coins starting to be used. So, there we have it. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you for watching. Please check out my sponsor, Relentless Rebels, because I think they're pretty cool. And you know, I won't actually promote something I don't like. I was actually contacted by another, I'm not going to name them because that's wrong as well, but I'd never heard of them, and I thought, who are you? I'm not a very big YouTuber, so why are you reaching out to me in the first place? That's my first thought. But then it's like, who are you? I've never heard of you. And I put them on Trustpilot, and they had abysmal reviews. And I thought, you know what, I'm not putting my name to that, so I won't promote them. So these people, they're okay. And I'm going to stop myself rambling now.